In the shadowy gloom of a cold, enigmatic New York City evening, the waters of the East River seemed to freeze over, reflecting the faint glow of streetlights. Police officers, following a black cat, had no idea they were about to witness something that would send shivers down their spines. The unusual feline seemed to beckon them forward, insistently leading the way. When they finally reached their destination, they were nearly speechless with surprise. Detective Constantine Riley was finishing his workday. He was a man who always saw the truth behind the lies, a quality that set him apart from his colleagues. Many considered him a loner, believing he preferred to work without a partner. He delved into old cases, relentlessly seeking answers where others had long given up. If this story has piqued your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Be sure to let us know in the comments what city you're watching from. And now we continue. Constantine didn't believe in coincidences. Every little thing, every detail, held significance for him. His life followed a strict routine, leaving work at precisely the same time each day, taking the same route home, brewing strong black tea in the evening, and immersing himself in the study of files that haunted him. But that evening was different. As he exited the precinct, his gaze was drawn to a narrow street, lost in a labyrinth of city alleys. A live shadow flickered in the darkness, but before he could make it out, a strange sound sliced through the air, a long drawn-out meow. It echoed down the deserted street, causing him to stop. Constantine was never superstitious, but there was something unsettling, almost sinister, about the sound, like a warning. He dismissed the thought and headed home, anticipating his usual evening surrounded by paperwork and hot tea. Sitting at his kitchen table, he spread out the documents of an old case that had been plaguing him for weeks. It was the story of several children who had vanished 5 years prior from different parts of the city. At first glance, there was no connection between the cases, but something eluded his attention. He had just opened the folder when he heard a soft scratching at the door. Opening it, he saw the same cat, black with mesmerizing golden eyes. There was a strange insistence in its gaze, as if it wanted to communicate something. Without waiting for an invitation, the creature entered the apartment and began to slowly explore the space, as if searching for something important. Constantine was too tired to shoo it away and left the visitor alone. However, he soon noticed the animal's unusual behavior. The cat froze in front of the table, its intense gaze fixed on the papers. There was something inexplicable, almost human, about it, as if it were trying to point out something significant. That night marked the beginning of a series of events that would forever change Constantine Riley's life. He didn't yet realize that his encounter with this mysterious creature wasn't a coincidence, but the first step towards unraveling a secret hidden behind the thick veils of New York City history. A secret involving ancient forces he hadn't even suspected. He couldn't sleep that night. His thoughts swirled around the cat's strange behavior and the documents lying before him. Snow fell slowly outside, blanketing the city in white, while the cat, curled up in a ball, seemed to guard his papers. Constantine felt he was on the verge of something great, something that would not only change his life, but also affect the fates of many others. The following morning was exceptionally cold, even by New York City winter standards. Constantine awoke earlier than usual and noticed that the black cat was still in his apartment. The animal was perched by the window, watching the city slowly come alive in the first rays of the morning sun. Its eyes, shimmering with golden reflections, seemed even more enigmatic against the soft light. The cat seemed to show an unusual interest in the detective's movements, as if expecting something important. When Constantine opened the front door slightly, the animal darted outside and stopped on the landing. It didn't move further, but its posture was clearly an invitation to follow. There was something insistent about its behavior that caused the man to change his morning plans. Instead of taking his usual route to the precinct, he decided to follow his mysterious guide through the winding streets of New York City. They moved through narrow alleyways, passing between ancient buildings, venturing further and further from the city center. The architectural grandeur gradually gave way to dilapidated facades with crumbling plaster, immersing them in an atmosphere of abandonment. Finally, the cat led him to a dilapidated building, once a residential house, but now standing empty and forgotten. Its facade retained traces of former luxury, molding with antique patterns, tall windows, some of which still showed glimpses of stained glass, and a massive door with a tarnished brass handle. Constantine felt an icy chill run down his spine. He remembered this place from old reports. Inside, everything resembled a past frozen in time. Antique furniture covered in a thick layer of dust, wallpaper peeling and torn in places, and cracked brickwork. The air was thick with the smell of dampness and decay. The cat confidently moved forward, guiding Constantine through the rooms until they found themselves in a spacious room, probably a former living room. In the center of the room, his gaze fell upon an old suitcase, half hidden under fallen pieces of furniture. Inside were children's things neatly folded, and a porcelain doll with a cracked eye. Under the suitcase lay a letter, written in a hurried hand on yellowed paper. "They are watching. Protect them before it's too late." These words made Constantine's heart pound. Carefully examining the room, he began to notice details that had escaped his attention on his first inspection. Strange symbols were visible on the walls, hidden under layers of paint. In the corner of the room, he noticed an old framed photograph. A group of children were pictured against the backdrop of this very building. The date on the picture matched the year the mysterious disappearances began. The cat, constantly watching his every move, occasionally meowed softly, as if confirming the accuracy of his guesses. When Constantine approached one of the walls to get a better look at the symbols, the cat suddenly became alert. Its fur stood on end, and it let out a low warning sound. At that moment, cautious footsteps were heard from behind the door. Someone else was in the building, and this stranger clearly didn't want to be discovered. Constantine froze listening. The slow, deliberate movements of the unknown person suggested that he was well acquainted with the house and knew which floorboards creaked. The black cat, without making a sound, moved towards the exit from the room, pointing the way to safety. Constantine followed, trying to move as quietly as possible. They crossed several rooms until they reached an inconspicuous door leading to the inner courtyard. Once outside, the detective cast one last look at the gloomy building. In one of the windows on the upper floor, he seemed to see movement. A barely discernible silhouette flickered and disappeared. This moment became the first key to unraveling a mystery that turned out to be far deeper than he could have imagined. Constantine, returning to the precinct after his discovery in the old, abandoned building, brought with him new clues. Among them was the letter found under the old suitcase, which was immediately sent to the lab. However, the preliminary analysis yielded no significant results. The paper turned out to be ordinary, the ink had faded over the years, and the fingerprints were so blurred that identification became impossible. Despite this, he was sure he was on the right track. His faithful companion was the black cat, which seemed to appear whenever the investigation reached a dead end. Like an invisible guide, the animal pointed the way through a labyrinth of riddles and secrets. Back in his office, Constantine attached a map of the city to the wall and began marking the locations where clues had been found. Gradually, a pattern began to emerge on the paper. All the findings were connected to historical sites that had experienced tragic events in the past. Dilapidated shelters, closed hospitals, once majestic mansions. Each of these objects seemed to be imbued with history, leaving invisible imprints for those who could recognize them. However, a new surprise awaited him in his office. Someone had clearly been examining his materials. The documents were slightly shifted and new marks, made by someone else's hand, appeared on the map. What struck him most was that the new marks fit perfectly into the pattern he had previously identified, adding a new layer of meaning to the investigation. That same day, he received a mysterious and signed letter. The handwriting in it painfully resembled the one in the note he had found. The message spoke of an ancient society that had guarded the city's secrets for centuries. It mentioned that black cats had always accompanied this society, acting as guides between the visible and invisible worlds. From that moment on, Constantine began to notice that he was being followed. Unclear shadows flickered in the evening fog when he returned home late. In his office, things were sometimes out of place, as if someone was looking for something important. However, instead of fear, he was overcome by an unknown inspiration. Every new inexplicable event confirmed that he had chosen the right path. The black cat became increasingly active, appearing at the most unexpected moments, and sometimes even pointing the way to new discoveries. One such night, it led Constantine to an old library, which hid a document containing long-forgotten information in its dusty archives. Among the yellowed pages he found a familiar symbol, the same one that appeared in the encrypted notebook and on the walls of the abandoned house. His discoveries, one after another, fell into a single chain that led to the solution hidden in the depths of the past. Each new discovery became the key to the next link in the great mystery. Constantine felt he was approaching the solution to something truly grand. It wasn't just another disappearance, but a mystery that extended far beyond the boundaries of an ordinary investigation. A story intertwined with ancient forces, lost traditions, and those who had guarded the secrets of New York City for centuries. His search led to unexpected discoveries concerning the past of New York City. The deeper he delved into archival documents, the more often he encountered mentions of a mysterious society called the City Guardians. According to ancient records, this society had existed since the city's founding, protecting it from unseen threats and preserving ancient knowledge. One of the most significant finds was the diary of one of the Brotherhood's members, dating back to the early 10th century. It detailed how the Guardians used special creatures, black cats with golden eyes. These mysterious animals, according to the chronicles, possessed a unique ability to see what was hidden from human sight and could guide their owners to important discoveries. The more Constantine delved into these records, the more often he noticed oddities in the behavior of his own cat. This black companion seemed to possess extraordinary intuition. It seemed to anticipate which documents would be key and which streets to explore. At times, the cat would freeze, staring intently into emptiness, as if noticing something inaccessible to human eyes. One day, while working on deciphering mysterious symbols, Constantine discovered something that resembled a map. Connecting the dots on an ancient city plan, he realized that he had before him a diagram of underground tunnels created long before the official founding of New York City. The cat, watching his actions, suddenly perked up and stared at a specific place in a museum. It was a sign. Despite the late hour, Constantine decided to check his hunch. Thanks to his position at the precinct, he easily gained access to the building. Inside, there was a smell of old books and wood. Guided by the cat, he crossed several halls and found himself in a small room, where his gaze fell upon a massive mirror in a heavy frame, studded with enigmatic symbols. They resembled those he had seen in the encrypted records. When moonlight penetrated the room through the window and touched the mirror, something amazing happened. A hidden map appeared on the wall. This diagram pointed to a system of underground rooms, hidden in the depths of the city. The points on it coincided with places where strange events had occurred. While Constantine was making notes, he suddenly heard footsteps in the corridor. His companion meowed quietly, warning of danger. They quickly hid behind a massive cabinet. A few moments later, two people in dark clothing entered the room. Speaking in hushed tones, they discussed an upcoming ritual that was to take place during the next full moon. Their words clearly indicated something related to the awakening of ancient forces. Meanwhile, Constantine's cat kept its gaze on the mirror, as if trying to decipher the message hidden within it. At that moment, it became completely clear. His investigation had gone much deeper than he had anticipated. He had become involved in something much older and more enigmatic than just a series of disappearances. After this discovery, Constantine decided to explore the network of tunnels. After preparing the necessary equipment, he went to one of the oldest buildings in New York City, a former mansion of the Volkov family. Now this building was used for administrative purposes, but, as it turned out, its basement hid secrets that could overturn everything known about the city's past. Behind a massive bookcase, covered with centuries of dust, a hidden narrow passage opened, leading down ancient worn steps. The deeper Constantine descended, the more strongly he felt the cold and dampness of the stone walls, covered with incomprehensible signs that seemed to be an exact copy of the symbols he had encountered in the encrypted notebook. Some of them shimmered with a faint phosphorescent light, casting enigmatic, trembling shadows on the walls. The cat, as if long familiar with this place, confidently walked ahead, not looking back, leading its companion into an unknown depth. Soon, a spacious hall opened before them, resembling an ancient gathering place. In the very center stood a massive stone table, around which antique chairs were haphazardly arranged, as if awaiting their owners. On the walls, weathered by time, hung faded tapestries depicting scenes from a distant past. Carefully examining them, Constantine recognized familiar scenes related to the founding of New York City. But one of the tapestries particularly caught his attention. It depicted people in ancient robes, surrounded by black cats with burning golden eyes. In their hands were objects that resembled ancient artifacts. Under this enigmatic canvas, he discovered a small, almost imperceptible cache. It contained an old book, bound in darkened leather, adorned with metal corners. Opening it, Constantine realized that he had before him an ancient chronicle of the city guardians. The records indicated that these mysterious people had protected New York City for centuries from unknown threats that jeopardized its spiritual balance. Their power lay in magical knowledge passed down through generations, and their allies were unusual creatures, black cats, not just animals but ancient guardian spirits. The silence of the underground was broken by faintly audible voices coming from the depths of the tunnels. Constantine froze listening. His companion, the cat, immediately reacted, gently pushing the detective towards a small niche in the wall where he could hide. A moment later, a group of people in black cloaks entered the hall. Constantine recognized them. They were the same people he had seen earlier in the museum. They were talking, discussing the upcoming ritual, which was to renew the city's protective forces. Their conversations touched upon certain chosen children, necessary to maintain the balance between worlds. Gradually, a disturbing picture formed in Constantine's mind. The mysterious disappearances of children were not crimes in the usual sense, but part of an ancient ritual. But something had clearly gone wrong. The balance had been disrupted. The guardians were frantically searching for a way to rectify the situation without revealing their secrets to the world. Waiting for the strangers to leave the hall, Constantine and his cat moved further through the labyrinth of underground passages. Soon, a room resembling a repository opened before them. The shelves were overflowing with ancient books, crystals, and mysterious objects whose purpose he could not decipher. On the shelves stood vials filled with enigmatic liquids, and in the center of the room stood a large crystal emitting a faint glow. The next few days, Constantine devoted to studying the ancient book found in the cache. Each page revealed new riddles to him, telling the story of the guardians. He learned that their community existed long before the founding of New York City, back in the days when this land was just swamps and sparse settlements. Following a prophecy, they came here, knowing that a city would one day appear in this place, which would become a connecting link between worlds. The cat, always nearby, sometimes nudged pages with its paw, as if pointing to important places. It was particularly drawn to symbols related to the rituals of protecting the city. According to ancient records, a special ceremony was required every 100 years to renew the magical barriers. The guardians, who had the gift of seeing the invisible and contacting guardian spirits, called children born with this gift seers. Their appearance was always accompanied by special signs, foreshadowing great changes in the city's fate. Among the many enigmatic omens, the appearance of black cats with bright golden eyes stood out. In houses where children with the gift of sight were born, these cats acted not only as protectors but also as guides, helping to reveal their abilities. And now, realizing this, Constantine understood why fate had brought him his mysterious companion at this particular moment. The time for a new ritual was approaching. In his office, Constantine meticulously compiled a map, marking the places where these unusual cats had been spotted in recent months. Gradually, a clear pattern began to emerge on the paper, resembling an ancient symbol of protection that he had seen once before. In the mysterious underground hall, the center of this pattern was an old mansion, once owned by one of the city's most influential families. Without delay, Constantine went to check this thread of fate. The mansion greeted him with majestic architecture, albeit considerably worn by time. Massive columns still firmly supported the balconies, although the intricate windows adorning the facade were hidden under a thick layer of dust. Behind these glass panes, the remains of stained glass windows, once filling the building with magical light, could still be discerned. Despite the apparent desolation, the house bore traces of recent human presence. On the second floor, in one of the rooms, a table was set with fresh food, and embers glowed in the fireplace, emitting a faint warm light. On the walls, among the old portraits of former owners, Constantine noticed something strange. In many of the paintings next to the people were the same black cats with burning amber eyes. Investigating further, in the owner's study, he found documents proving that the mansion still belonged to the descendants of an old family. Moreover, despite a lack of publicity, this family continued to play a key role in the city's life. Suddenly, he heard the quiet sound of footsteps on the stairs. The black cat accompanying Constantine meowed softly, warning him to be cautious. A few moments later, an elegant elderly woman in a strict dark dress entered the room. There was no surprise in her eyes. On the contrary, it seemed that she had been expecting this moment for a long time. "We knew you would come, Detective Riley," she said in a calm voice. "The ancient signs pointed to you as the one destined to play an important role in the coming events." She introduced herself as Eleanor Vance, the heiress of the family that stood at the origins of the Guardian's Order. Inviting Constantine to a spacious living room where antique furniture breathed history, she began to tell her story, leisurely pouring tea into elegant antique cups. "We, the Guardians, stand guard not only over the material world. Each century brings new trials, and now the time has come to conduct an important ritual." The black cat, which had been sitting quietly at Constantine's feet, gently jumped down and leaped onto Eleanor's armrest. She affectionately stroked its smooth fur and explained, "This is Midnight. We have been watching you for a long time. You are the one who doesn't stop at superficial explanations, always looking for a deeper meaning." Eleanor explained that every 100 years, the city's energy protection needed to be renewed with a special ritual. And for this, children with a special gift were necessary. They were called seers. They could perceive the invisible world. But contrary to popular belief, such children do not disappear. "Explain what you mean?" Constantine asked, frowning. A twilight haze began to thicken in the room. Eleanor lit several antique candles. Their soft light trembled in the semi-darkness, casting dancing shadows on the walls that seemed to come alive. Constantine even felt that among these silhouettes, he could distinguish the figures of people in old clothes. "These are the memories of this house," the woman explained, leading him to a massive mirror in a carved frame. "Look closely." In the reflection, Constantine saw not only his own face but also many other shadowy figures. They were translucent, ghostly, but there was no doubt they were here nearby. "You are beginning to see," Eleanor said. "This city stands at the intersection of special energy lines that the ancients called pathways of power. New York City appeared in this place not by chance. The city's founders knew about its special purpose and importance. Our duty is to maintain the balance between worlds, to prevent the boundaries from becoming too thin or, conversely, from breaking apart," Eleanor said, her voice sounding confident. She carefully took an inlaid medallion from the folds of her dress. On its surface was engraved the same symbol that Constantine had recently encountered in the underground hall. Eleanor handed him the artifact. Her gaze was insightful. "This object is the key to ancient knowledge," she explained. "It will show you the way to the other seers. Time is moving inexorably forward, and we must gather everyone before the next full moon." When Constantine took the medallion, he felt a barely perceptible vibration, as if the object had come alive in his hands. Midnight, carefully following the events, approached and gently touched the stones inlaid in the amulet with its paw. They glowed with a soft light. "Now you are part of the circle," Eleanor said calmly, her voice sounding both strict and gentle. "But remember, great knowledge always carries with it great responsibility. What has been revealed to you today will forever change your perception of reality." Suddenly, a strange sound echoed from the depths of the mansion, a reminder of the distant past, like the melody of an old harpsichord. Eleanor turned sharply. Her eyes became wary. "It seems they are already here," she said mysteriously. "It's time to introduce you to the other guardians." They passed through a suite of rooms, each breathing history. Old tapestries hung on the walls, paintings in gilded frames, and majestic furniture exuded the aura of the past. Midnight silently glided along the floor, which remembered the steps of many generations of guardians. In a spacious hall they were already waiting. People of various ages gathered there, dressed in modern but elegant suits. However, something in their appearance betrayed their true nature. They belonged to the ancient order. Each had a medallion around their neck, similar to the one that now belonged to Constantine. "Welcome to the Circle of Guardians," said an elderly man with noble gray hair. He introduced himself as Michael Petrov, a direct descendant of a prominent historical figure. "We have long awaited the one who can perceive the true essence of things. You made the right choice by bringing him here," he addressed Eleanor. Anna, a young woman with red hair, stepped forward. Approaching the harpsichord, she gently touched the keys, and the sound filled the hall, filling the air with strange images. Suddenly, scenes from the past and present of New York City began to change before them, as if the city were revealing its secrets. "This is the city's song," Eleanor explained. "Every building, every street, every stone holds its own melody. Together, they create a symphony that maintains the balance between worlds. But today we must use this music to restore the ritual." She unfolded an old map of the city before her. The paper was darkened with age. "Look," she said, pointing to several marked places. Ancient points of power are located here. They are interconnected, forming a complex energy network that feeds the protective barrier of New York City. But it has weakened lately. Constantine examined the map and noticed that the points marked on it coincided with the places where he had seen strange symbols, and noticed the appearance of black cats. You are right, Eleanor nodded. The guardian cats feel disturbances in the balance and are trying to warn us. Midnight suddenly jumped onto the table and looked intently at the map. His paw froze in one place. It was an old cathedral located on the outskirts of the city. Interesting, Professor Miller muttered. This cathedral was built on the site of an ancient sanctuary. Perhaps that's where the malfunction occurred. Eleanor thoughtfully looked at the map. The seers are not accidentally gathered here. Each of them possesses a unique ability necessary for conducting the ritual. They are like keys that open doors to understanding the true nature of the city, she said. Anna finished her playing on the harpsichord, and the visions faded, as if they had never been there. With them disappeared the feeling of anxiety, but the understanding remained. They had little time left. If the ritual is not performed on time, the barrier will collapse, and what it contained will come out, Eleanor said, and her voice trembled. Constantine felt that there was no turning back. The medallion around Constantine's neck trembled and vibrated again, as if responding to something invisible. Midnight, his constant companion, approached, looking into his eyes, shining with a golden light. At that moment it dawned on Constantine. His purpose in this story was much deeper than he could have imagined. He had turned out to be not just near special children. He had become part of an ancient order secretly protecting the city from threats hidden from ordinary sight. The next morning, Eleanor took him to a secluded wing of the mansion where young seers lived and studied. The room they entered was filled with sunlight streaming through huge windows overlooking an ancient garden. The room was remarkably tidy, filled with a mysterious atmosphere. Around were books, musical instruments, and enigmatic mechanisms whose purpose Constantine could only guess at. At first glance, the children seemed quite ordinary. Some were playing, some were reading, some were drawing, but on closer inspection, each of them had a special aura, an almost imperceptible inner light. They were united by one more thing. Each child had its own black guardian cat, similar to Midnight, accompanying Constantine. Meet our seers, Eleanor said with a smile. One by one she introduced the children. Alice with fiery red curls, capable of distinguishing the energy flows of the city. Max, a thoughtful boy who could hear the voices of stones. Sophia with reddish hair, whose ability lay in reading the memory of objects, and others. Each of them possessed a unique gift. But as Eleanor explained, one more seer was needed to fully restore the protective barrier. Without him, the ritual is impossible, she explained, showing Constantine the children's drawings. They depicted New York City, invisible to the ordinary eye, existing parallel to the familiar city. Alina, one of the girls, approached and handed Constantine her latest drawing. On the paper was a boy surrounded by a mystical blue glow, next to which was a black cat with eyes shining gold. He flickers, she whispered. He lives where the river meets the sky. Sophia carefully picked up an old brooch from the table and, closing her eyes, concentrated. I see a bridge, she whispered. An old bridge with stone lions and a house with green shutters. The boy likes to watch the water, but he doesn't know what exactly draws him to the river. Max, sitting at an antique piano, began to play an enigmatic melody. The sounds, spreading through the room, enveloped the space with a mysterious excitement. The stones sing about him, he said. They remember his steps. He comes there every day when the sun merges with the water. This melody seemed familiar to Constantine, as if he had already heard it somewhere in the back streets of the city. Midnight, without taking his eyes off, listened to the children. His eyes sparkled with understanding. Suddenly, he moved towards another black cat Gray. They exchanged glances, as if exchanging silent knowledge. At that moment, the surface of the canal trembled, although there was not the slightest wind. In the reflection, something strange appeared. Images from distant eras, silhouettes of people in the clothes of past centuries, the contours of ancient ships gliding on the waves. Do you see that too? Constantine breathed. Always, Igor whispered quietly, intently watching the water. The water remembers everything that happened in the city. Sometimes it even shows what hasn't happened yet. Constantine cautiously began to tell the boy about the circle of guardians, about the seer children, and about the important mission that he had to fulfill. Igor listened attentively, but his face showed no surprise. It seemed he had always known about it. "I saw them," he whispered quietly. "In reflections. Other children like me. A woman in a dark dress, waiting for us in the old mansion. I knew that one day someone would come for me." Gray, his faithful guardian cat, let out a muffled purr, as if confirming his master's words. The water in the canal continued to ripple, carrying their thoughts into the depths of time. Suddenly, among the reflections, Constantine saw something that made him hold his breath. A scene of the future ritual. Children stood in a circle, united by a single goal. Their cats shone with ancient magic, and symbols filled with the power of centuries flared around them. Now he knew. The last key had been found, necessary to restore the barrier protecting the city. When Igor returned to the Vance mansion with the others, the house came alive, filled with new forces. Preparations for the ritual began. In the spacious hall of the mansion, now transformed into a kind of classroom, the children, under the supervision of experienced guardians, developed their unusual abilities. Each revealed their potential. Alina learned to control energy flows. Her movements in the air resembled drawings with an invisible brush. She touched objects, extracting hidden stories and secrets of the past. And Igor, who had recently joined the group, mastered the ability to read the signs of water, collecting scattered messages in the reflections of ancient mirrors and raindrops. The guardian cats relentlessly accompanied their wards, helping them concentrate their strength and direct it in the right direction. Constantine quickly noticed a special invisible connection between the children and their guardians. They understood each other, without words. Eleanor explained that each of the seers was not a separate unit, but part of a whole mechanism. Their powers complement each other, creating harmony. Alina controls the energy flows and Max, interacting with her, can restore the lost balance. Professor Miller joined the training, bringing with him ancient folios describing the rituals of past centuries. "Every 100 years, the ritual proceeds differently," he said, turning the yellowed pages. "The city itself decides how to renew the protective barrier, and the seers must be able to feel and implement its design." A soft piano melody sounded in the mansion, tuning the children to the right mood. These sounds helped unite their forces, leading to amazing effects. Shimmering signs appeared in the air. Objects trembled slightly, responding to the rhythm of ancient melodies, and water droplets began to reflect scenes of the past and the future. Constantine noticed that his medallion began to react strangely to the training. The stones on it flashed with every burst of energy. "This is not just an ornament," Eleanor explained, watching his reaction. "These artifacts help direct and control energy during the ritual." Meanwhile, Michael Petrov taught the children the history of the city, telling them about places of power and their significance. "New York City is not just an architectural ensemble," he explained. "It's a living organism where every street and every building plays its role in maintaining balance. Our mission is to preserve this harmony." In the evenings in the mansion's garden, the young seers practiced combining their energies. Under the watchful eye of the guardian cats, they created stunning light compositions. Alina's energy streams intertwined with Igor's water drawings, and the music emanating from Max's stones gave volume to Sophia's visions. Time moved inexorably forward, and as the full moon approached, it became clear that the barrier had weakened. Each day brought them closer to the moment when only the joint efforts of the seers could restore it. Constantine felt the growing tension in the city more and more strongly. Even ordinary people, without special abilities, noticed oddities. Reflections in windows became unnatural, mysterious sounds were heard at night, and an inexplicable anxiety hung in the air. It seemed that the city itself was trying to warn its inhabitants about the coming changes. Preparing for the ritual required an even deeper immersion in the mysteries of New York City. Constantine, along with Midnight, explored ancient places of power marked on the Guardian's maps. Each of them revealed new riddles to them, helping to better understand the magical nature of the city. Of particular interest was the old cathedral mentioned by Professor Miller at the Circle's meeting. From the outside, it was no different from an ordinary church, but as soon as you crossed its threshold, it became clear. This place was filled with ancient energy. The walls seemed to breathe. The stained glass windows refracted the light in such a way that patterns, forming into mystical signs, shimmered in the semi-darkness. "This cathedral is a key element of the protective barrier," Eleanor explained, joining the investigation. It was built on the site of an ancient sanctuary, and its stones hold the memory of rituals that were performed long before the city's founding. Max, succumbing to an inner impulse, sat down at the old organ and ran his hands over the keys. His music made the cathedral stones sing, reviving the ancient secrets hidden in their depths. At that moment, Constantine understood. The ritual they were preparing for would not just be a test, but a key to preserving the balance that was about to be broken. Constantine, listening to the surrounding sounds, seemed to hear in them the whole history of the city. The hum of the first construction work, the melodious ringing of bells, the echoing steps of people who lived in different eras. All this intertwined into a single complex symphony of time. At the same moment, Sophia, barely touching the ancient icons, seemed to be transported to the past. Her voice sounded thoughtfully. Rituals of protection have been conducted here since ancient times. She continued, closing her eyes. I see people in old clothes. They form a circle, and next to them are black cats with mysterious golden eyes. This place was used to maintain the balance of forces. Alina intently watched the energy flows that converged in the very center of the cathedral, creating a complex, intricate pattern. Her voice sounded confident. This map. The lines of force connect this cathedral with the key points of the city. At that time, Igor, watching the drops of water slowly flowing down the ancient walls, noticed. The water holds the memory of all the rituals performed here. It carries their power. Meanwhile, Midnight and other guardian cats attentively examined the room, lingering in special places, as if trying to attract the attention of their wards. They seemed to read an invisible map of energy lines, helping the children better understand the structure of the power of this place. Eleanor, taking an old folio in a leather binding from her bag, said, "This is the diary of one of the first guardians." Inside were detailed instructions on how to properly use the power of such places. Each stone, each stained glass window, each ornament played a specific role. While the children mastered the basics of energy management, Constantine suddenly felt his medallion begin to emit barely perceptible pulsations. This rhythm coincided with the heartbeat of the city, a barely perceptible vibration that he was only beginning to understand. The city is preparing for the ritual, Eleanor explained. It's like it's waking up from a long sleep, accumulating strength to renew its protection. All places of power resonate with this rhythm, creating a single sound. Suddenly, a sunbeam breaking through a stained glass window drew an unusual pattern on the floor. It was the exact symbol they had previously seen in the underground hall. "This is a sign," Eleanor whispered. "The city is telling us that the time is approaching. We must be ready. Tomorrow at the full moon," she added. "The day before, the atmosphere will be filled with special tension." Soon, all the members of the Circle of Guardians gathered for a final meeting. In the huge hall were not only the regular participants of the order, but also guardians who had arrived from the most remote corners of the world. There was a wise gray-haired Japanese man who protected Kyoto, and next to him was a majestic African woman who had mastered the secrets of desert rituals. There was also a guardian of Indian sacred rivers. "Tomorrow's ritual is important not only for New York City," Eleanor explained. "This city is one of the main nodes of the world's network of protective barriers. If the balance here is disturbed, the consequences will be felt by the whole world." Each guardian brought with them ancient artifacts designed to enhance the upcoming ritual. The seers, possessing a special gift, felt that the moment was approaching. Their abilities increased with each minute. Now Alina clearly saw the energy flows, as if they were drawn in the air. Max heard the music of the stones becoming louder, even in his sleep. Sophia, touching objects, instantly understood their connection with the city and its protective magic. The guardian cats, like their wards, also changed. Their eyes shone brighter than usual, and their movements resembled a graceful dance. They seemed to exist in several dimensions at once. Midnight, gathering all the cats in a circle in the mansion's garden, watched as they seemed to discuss something important, holding their own mysterious council. Constantine felt that the city itself began to prepare for the upcoming event. Barely discernible images appeared above the surface of the East River. Ancient buildings straightened up, as if straightening their shoulders in anticipation of an important moment. Even ordinary passers-by felt something unusual. People spoke quieter, moved more cautiously, and their gazes were increasingly directed towards the sky.